Hey parents, before we start today's episode, I have exciting news. We're hosting a podcast pop-up where you can interact with the resources and guests featured here in real life. It's the second annual Podcast-a-Palooza, and it's free to attend. There will be a live animal presentation by Animal Tales and food trucks like Bam Snowballs, Kip's Hot Dogs, and Melt Pensacola. Plus, one lucky guest will win a $250 Amazon gift card. So mark your calendar for Saturday, February 1st, 2025, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Booker T. Washington High School. We'll see you there.
In order to help foster responsible, respectful, kind children, we have to model that. There's no better way to learn than from the adults in your life to show you what's acceptable.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success. Each generation has its share of burdens to bear, struggles that stem from whatever societal soup we're all wading through at the time. And this generation seems to be dealing with its fair share of bullying. As a parent, you want your kid to be neither the victim nor the bully, but many wonder, how does the school handle bullying? My next guest is the Director of Alternative Education, and today she's going to share what you should know as a parent and answer some very real questions. Over 33 years in education, juggler of plates, advocate for kindness, Kerri Coots. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Meredith.
So I think we should start with what your department does, because it's kind of a long list. Your department works on with all the charter schools, oversees all the juvenile justice programs, the teen parent program, disciplinary reassignment, student attendance, alternative schools, online bullying investigation systems. Did I miss anything?
You didn't.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
And that last piece is the online bullying investigation systems. So that's where anyone can go online and report harassment, correct?
That's correct.
How many of those cases are you seeing come through on a weekly basis?
I would say we average 15.
That feels like a lot.
It is.
Wow.
It is.
That feels like a lot. Well, I'm really glad that we're talking about this today, because in my social circles of friends who have children, this is almost always part of the conversation. And so I'm so glad that we're able to talk openly about it with virtually, parents are here with us in the room, right?
Right.
And in fact, a lot of the questions that I have today are from parents. I kind of did an informal Facebook poll and got questions from them because I wanted to be sure to connect you to the people that have the questions as best as that I could. But the first question that I have, what is the best way to report an incident? Is it best to do it formally through that online dashboard, or if a parent can speak to the child's parent, the child who's being the bully, should they go that route?
It depends on where the bullying is occurring.
Oh.
If it's in the neighborhood or at the ballpark or any after-school activity, I would certainly recommend that parents talk to each other. If it's happening at school, because what we typically see is that it's affecting the child's attendance or his willingness or her willingness to want to participate at school. We see those signs. So I would recommend that the parent start at the school. And I'm glad you're talking about the way that we can report online, because people may not know that even if they come in to the school or they talk to the teacher or an administrator at the school, we're going to document that report in our system no matter what. So the parent, if they don't want to talk to anyone at the school, they can put it in online. But if they talk to the school, we're going to document it in that system because we want to keep track. We want to know.
So you recommend that they speak to a principal, or should it be a teacher, a school counselor? Who at the school should be their point person first?
I always encourage parents to talk to the classroom teacher first.
Which classroom teacher? Because there's usually multiple classrooms, correct?
Correct. I would start with the homeroom teacher or the teacher that the student has a relationship with, or the class that they're most comfortable sharing that information with the teacher. And then from there, certainly someone in administration if you feel like things aren't being investigated or being dealt with.
And you said it kind of depends on where the bullying is happening. If it's in the neighborhood, at the ballpark, or in the classroom, or, on school campus, essentially.
Right.
What if it's happening virtually? What if it's a classmate, but the bullying is happening in a group text, for example?
I would want parents to reach out to the other parent first, try to have the 2 students or 3 students work it out on their own. But what we see is typically things like that spill over into school and begins to cause problems within the school day. So most likely it needs to be addressed at the school.
And this kind of brings up the really uncomfortable gray area of potentially sex crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does the school handle the overlap of sex crimes? And for those that are listening, they're like, what do you mean sex crimes? If a one child is redistributing a nude photo of another child, that's distribution of child pornography, and that is a crime. So tell me what happens in a case like that.
Well, you're naming it appropriately when you follow it up with crimes, because it can be, and it will be investigated to see if a crime has been committed, and we will communicate with law enforcement. It will begin to go that route, and it won't just be school consequences. They'll be more severe.
I think that's important for parents to know, that the school is not going to just sweep that under the rug, because you hear those horror stories, even at the university level, of stuff not really getting through to the proper channels.
You're right. And you brought up a really great point in the opening, and you talked about generational
societal soup.
And certainly that's something when I was growing up, we were not so influenced by the internet and social media. And our students are now, and the adults too. I'm not just talking about kids, I'm talking about adults too. And that's hard, because when you choose to reach out in that format or post something, it never goes away. There is a digital footprint forever. And I don't know that a young person who has a cell phone and posts something harmful can understand the long-term consequences of how that can hurt someone.
As parents think about having the talk with their kids, it feels like what you're saying is there's another talk that has to happen with kids.
100%.
And that's the talk about how you use the internet and who you let follow you, who you follow. That is truly a societal soup.
It is. And any research that you read or any article that you read about how do you support your children? How do you raise a confident kid? Because what we do read is and know through research that, more confident kids, children that have a high self-esteem, are less likely to fall victim to bullying. Or even if they do, they have the skills to know that words are just words. Even though they may hurt, I've got the skills that I can overcome this person who's trying to make me feel bad about myself.
And confident kids don't become bullies.
That's right.
No, I recently read that Escambia County Public Schools no longer allows cell phones during the day. Is that correct?
For any other reason than an educational purpose.
Do you think
Yes.
that'll have a positive impact on the bullying rates?
Yeah, I do. I think any time that we can have without the opportunity to jump on the internet or to text or do anything rather than communicating face to face, whether it be in the classroom or at home, is only going to help our society.
I think so too. It may even boost some of that confidence because you've got to communicate the old-fashioned way.
That's right.
A little bit. And there's a lot of power in that because, and it's not just psychosocial, like there's some physiological things that happen when two people sit across from each other like we are right now, and we look each other eye to eye. You know, research shows that our breathing pattern becomes similar and all these cool things happen that are helpful for our brains and certainly helpful for young brains as they develop. So it'll be interesting to maybe do a follow-up with you in a year from now and see if those weekly reports are down from that number you shared earlier.
I certainly hope they are. And I think, too, looking back at the year 2020 and then 2021, students were allowed the opportunity to learn from home. And I think we're still maybe trying to catch up from a lot of the skills that we learn as kids. I call them friendship skills. If I'm playing with a group on the playground and I see, one of our classmates over by themselves, how do I go over and communicate? Hey, you come join us, things like that for me, I know was really kind of a natural way to live back in the day.
Back in the day, yes.
In the 70s. And now I don't think that's so natural. So that just means we're going to have to work harder at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Be a little bit more purposeful, intentional.
Yes.
And I think parents who are listening to this, that's where they're at. And so that's why, again, I'm so grateful that we can have this conversation because the people that are tuning in to listen to this episode, they're ready for that intentionality. That's what they want, So on that note, I want to share a question from a parent.
Okay.
They ask, how do you substantiate a case when the definition of air quotes bullying varies family to family and generation to generation? For example, if a parent doesn't allow words like stupid, dumb, or hate, how do you handle it when a child thinks they are being bullied if another student uses those words towards them?
Great question, because certainly we're all raised differently, come from different backgrounds, and what may be acceptable in your home may not be acceptable in my home. I'm just going to go back to communicating. We have to have those conversations with our children and say, in this house, this is what the expectations are. Raise that student to, if another kid says stupid or, that may be what they're hearing in their home, but that's not what defines you. You're building up that confidence in that kid to know that his mom and dad think it's okay to say that. And it's not about me.
It's not about me. Mm-hmm. On the school level, how do you substantiate the cases that do tend to come from that angle of, well, he said this to me, she said that to me?
I think a lot of that goes back to knowing where that child is coming from. Are they not getting enough attention or enough accolades to say, they may not be a straight A student, but they're doing the best that they can. And we need to celebrate everyone and let them know that they're valuable. Sometimes kids can get to the point where they just feel like everyone is against them. And it may just take one person that's reiterating that to them, and then they start to believe it. We just have to be in tune and have conversations.
That sounds like a really delicate conversation for a school employee to have with a kid whose parent has gone online and said, this other kid called my kid dumb, therefore they're being bullied. What does that look like?
Well, we obviously see that.
Yeah.
And as parents and adults, we have to be the examples and the role models for our kids. And again, going back to that parent, putting something out on the internet is just really not the way to handle a situation. Let's talk about it face to face.
So does the school then have a conversation with the parent? What's the process of peeling back those layers to figure out, does this constitute actual bullying, or are we having a hurt feelings situation?
Well, it's bringing in all the parties and having those conversations. And we would, in terms of an investigation, we're getting all sides. We're going to talk to all of the kids that are involved. And we want to talk to the parents too.
That sounds like a tightrope to walk, for sure, for sure.
But we're here, Meredith, to provide a safe and caring environment so that we can teach kids to be successful. And if part of that is making them feel safe emotionally, then that's what we're here to do.
I could see where that part of that process is having that hard conversation, but getting all the parties together and kind of that face-to-face moment, hopefully. Another parent wants to know, what's the best way for a child to respond in the moment if they feel like they're being bullied? I thought that was a great question, too. It is.
Well, the best way is, as much as you can, ignore, because the bully is looking for a reaction. That's what they want. And it's hard not to react. Even as an adult, when someone is deliberately using unkind words or has posted something, not very nice to you, the worst thing you can do is retaliate. But it's hard.
It's hard even when you hear a third person account of like you're the child of a friend who is being bullied. You want to like look up that kid's address and go teach him a lesson, right? Because that's our nature. Even if you don't have children, you feel like a natural paternity over the children in the community. You want to keep them safe. You want them to feel loved. And so
absolutely,
when another kid is being a bully, you really feel like those instincts well up and you feel for the kid too, because that's a hard situation. And that's a situation that you have personal experience with. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. We are able to see all of the reports that come through the district in our office. And I have talked about the fact that we monitor those. We follow up with schools to make sure that those investigations are being carried out and we've come to a conclusion and the reporting is done accurately. But what we want to hear is that when an instance of bullying has truly occurred, we want to hear the good stories. And last year at one of our elementary schools, we did have a situation. It was over the internet, sharing some not so nice words about a classmate. And through lots of group sharing and just having those real talks about we're all different and these words are hurting. And happy to report by the end of the school year, they had turned it around and they had a loving classroom environment. And that young man was truly remorseful and could see how hurtful his actions were.
One of the parents actually asked about that. They said, how do you respond as a parent if you never thought your child was capable of bullying and then you found out that they were?
Mm-hmm. And that's hard too. Children who are choosing to be the bully are actually, in my opinion, oftentimes reaching out for attention or because they're feeling as though they're not belonging in the group that they want to belong in. Mm-hmm. And they don't have those skills to communicate in a good way or a respectful way. Can I hang out with you guys? So they begin to try to fit in the wrong way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is a topic that you, as a child, had some experience with, too.
I did.
Can you share about that?
Sure. I was in middle school, and there were several girls who, and it really, looking back on it now, it occurred over several years. Just the name calling, the looks as you're walking down the hallway. Don't come to the skating rink tonight, or, else kinds of things. But I had a really strong support system at home. I knew I could talk to my parents. And I also knew I could talk to a teacher at school and get help if I needed it. I don't think I ever got to the point where I was truly fearful, because I probably didn't know any better, that they would actually act on anything they said. But I think just growing up, knowing that I was loved and supported really, really helped.
Absolutely. Another parent says, if your child is non-confrontational, how do you support them being docile while encouraging them to stand up for themselves, but also not be mistreated?
And that's a tough one.
Especially if the parent has the opposite personality, I think that would be especially challenging.
It would be. And I get those phone calls a lot. It goes back to, do you think that any type of retaliation or so-called standing up for yourself, because that can look two different ways. That can look like a very calm, I don't like it when you talk to me that way, and you walk away. Or it could lead to physical violence, which we do not want at all. So showing kids that walking away is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of maturity. And as much as you can, that's really how you need to handle those types of events.
That's so tough. I'm just putting myself in the shoes emotionally of that parent. And that would be so hard to control my face, as I do. You know how your face kind of gives you away of how you really feel?
Oh, do I?
Right?
Well, as a mom, and then, I was a teacher first and then became a mom. And that brought a whole new way of looking at things for me.
Yeah.
Really did. And you certainly want your prized possession to be treated well and to feel safe. So I get it.
I mean, almost every answer that you've given has a thread of what happens at home is a huge piece of the puzzle. I can't help but wonder where the bullies are seeing this behavior. And I'm not blaming the parents 100% because, as you said earlier, we have the internet, right? And not just do we have the internet, but we have the internet on not fully developed brains.
Right.
Like you said, the beautiful story about the young man who realized what harm he was doing. Well, I mean, he literally doesn't have a fully developed brain yet, because we know that the prefrontal cortex doesn't fill in until they're 25, right? So it's kind of a bad combo. But I start to wonder, is there a way that parents can model the opposite behavior at home to prevent the bullies from existing? Because we talk about in bullying, right? But how can we make the opposite true?
Well, we absolutely can. And what you said earlier about, not blaming parents, and we're not. We want to help, because we understand that in today's society, we're working. Parents are working, and they're either maybe not at home, but when they get home and they're trying to get everyone fed and homework, and we're tired.
And that's work also.
It is a lot of work.
Parents have more than one job.
They do. But in order to help foster responsible, respectful, kind children, we have to model that. There's no better way to learn than from the adults in your life to show you what's acceptable.
And is that the subtle yet official launch of your kindness campaign?
It is.
Tell me what you're thinking about that, because when you shared that with me off mic, I just love that idea. You're absolutely right. We hear all about preventing bullying, but I don't know that I personally have heard much about promoting kindness.
So last school board meeting, we had our yearly proclamation for National Bullying Prevention Month. And we typically like to create our own slogan for our school district. And we started looking at ideas, and I just thought, how can we promote this in a more positive way? Say no to bullying, and we see say no to drugs. Well, as kids, And adults too, sometimes what's the first thing you want to do when someone tells you no?
You want to do whatever it is that they're telling you not to do.
So I thought we've got to turn this around. And it's our team in the Alted office. We work together. And so we're going to choose kindness and respect. And the Escambia County Public School System is against bullying. We are united against bullying. So that's the direction we're going in this year. And I find myself needing a daily reminder of being more positive because we do see so much negative. And we've got to get that message out there that we've got a lot of good people. I can promise you there are more respectful and kind children in school right now than there are bullies.
That's very encouraging. Is there going to be any online resource for this kindness initiative?
Yes, you can check the Alternative Education website, which we will also post on the school district's homepage. We'll have banners at every school that will be promoting this type of awareness.
Love that. I think that's great. Well, I love it. You're wearing a Be Kind shirt. I think that's a great start. I have now a Be Kind shirt.
You had to have one too.
I love it. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to answer these tough questions and to encourage parents that they do have the authority, the autonomy, the agency to shape how their young person thinks about kindness. That's beautiful.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.